Wokeness is our new civic religion. It's our new religion of human rights. Human rights for this, human rights for that. Human rights for things that just aren't human rights. Rights, of course, we believe in the English-speaking world are intrinsic to our person, and so if it's not intrinsic, it ain't a right. So when Tedros of the World Health Organization says, well, healthcare or health is a fundamental human right, not really, but it also implies that healthcare must be a human right. And he says, the World Health Organization promotes the idea of people-centered care. It is the embodiment of human rights of the practice of care. I call on all countries to respect and protect human rights in health and their laws and their health policies and programs. So basically everyone who wants to have, the NHS. And obviously just what this looks like in practice is the NHS's woke blog. Just, white people feel uncomfortable. You've got privilege.
I love how it came across as a threat. Like, imagine saying that to black people.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like, imagine the Department of Work and Pensions tweeting that.
Yeah, white people, we want you to feel uncomfortable.
It was like the Home Office tweets, brown people feel uncomfortable.
I mean, it would be awful, yeah.
50,000 retweets.
Anyway, so next up is housing is, of course, a human right, according to this new religion. As the American Bar Association point out, adequate housing is a human right as a widely recognized concept. Yes, okay, widely recognized by idiots, because it's not true, right? And the way that they base this on is nonsense as well. The right is protected in Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 11 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, blah, 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 blah. But that doesn't make sense.
All these weird appeals to authorities.
Yes. All of these documents are wrong.
You can't appeal to yourself, to nature.
No.
The fact that I'm born with the right to speak freely.
No. The original conception of human rights is that it's things that are within you. And therefore the number of human rights are equal to the number of people. So there are no, we're going to expand human rights. No, you're going to make things up. You're going to make things up out of the air. You're going to make things up that then have to be provided at the barrel of a gun. But yeah, so housing is now a human right. So if someone doesn't have a house, whose job is it to make the house? Do you have to build them a house? Does the government? Does your neighbor? Do we force them to build their own house?
Society.
No. Get building, homeless person. You need a house. It's your human right. I don't know. I mean, what are we doing here, But anyway, yeah, so there are lots of people who think that housing is a human right, and they're all wrong. But it gets more ridiculous. Turns out that the United Nations decided that broadband is a human right. Broadband internet. Something that didn't exist 20 years ago magically came into being as a human right. I mean, I think my gran's got broadband, so she doesn't have human rights. Her human rights are being violated by British Telecom. This is absurd. And Jeremy Corbyn's like, oh yes, broadband's a human right. It's like, no, Jeremy, you're a moron. This is just not true. But for some reason, the United Nations has declared unambiguously that broadband access is a basic human right. So it's not even just like, some sort of advanced human right, like food and water, which is still not human rights, by the way.
I know, but that's where it always starts. Like, water is a human right. It can't be. No. We can say that everyone should be provided with it as a privilege, and that's how we do it.
So when there's a drought, nature's violating my human rights?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But it starts off there, and it ends up with
when I finish my dinner, my plate is violating my human rights.
I don't have any Fabergé eggs. Yeah. My human rights.
But they're made of gold. They're not food.
That's not the point, though. You can have it for water, you can have it for anything that's not digestible as well, like broadband.
But surely as soon as I finish my dinner, then I've run out of food, and my human rights are being violated because I don't have any food on my plate. So I need to go to an eternal buffet to make sure that my human rights are being protected.
But then when you're full and you don't want to get more food, are you violating your own human rights?
I have no idea, because this is all nonsense. Yeah. But yes, not merely a dial-up connection that the UN had previously decreed was a human right. Kind of fun.
Cruel mistress are they?
Dial-up broadband is dial-up internet is a human right. But the kind of seamless service Americans find at any Starbucks. Think about what that implies. Freedom of expression now mandates the ability to broadcast that expression to the entire world. So yeah. Absurd.
Should we talk about Trump being banned from Twitter?
We could, but we're going to move on because we've got a lot to do. So the entire premise of this new religion is ridiculous, and that's not going to stop them. And you can see this expanding and expanding. And so if you look at, say, the United States Conference of Mayors, which is the official non-partisan organization of cities with a population of 30,000 or larger, they've adopted a resolution on critical race theory because this is one of the official doctrines of this new religion. non-partisan, right? So they've adopted a resolution in support of critical race theory in public K-12 education.
Look, if there are no Republicans, then it's non-partisan.
That's right.
Because there's no part.
That's right. Right. Whereas critical race theory is the practice of interrogating the role of race and racism in society, in which racism can be seen across systemic, institutional, and interpersonal levels, operating over the course of time and across generations. That's like saying that Nazism is the practice of interrogating the role of international finance in undermining the state.
Racial socialism.
I mean, technically that's kind of true, but I think you are leaving out quite a lot there, International finance can be seen across systemic, institutional, and interpersonal levels, operating over the course of time and across generations. Yeah, but... Anyway, they continue. Whereas historical racism and racist situations have caused de jure and de facto discrimination against people of color and have created racial inequalities in all facets of the life of the United States. And these racial inequalities continue to the present day. So when they say, they say inequities, but when they say inequity, they mean inequality, and inequality does not mean injustice. But they give us the basic tenets of critical race theory. So this is the core beliefs of this religion, right? Recognition that race is not biologically real. How is it that my children will have the same skin tone as me? And how is it that Barack Obama's children have the same skin tone of him?
The culture did it.
Why is it that when you have two people of two different races mixing, the skin tone is a mixture of the parents? How? How is it that you can actually dig up ancient skeletons and figure out what area of the world they came from? But it's not biologically real, but it's socially constructed. See, this is a tenet of faith. Whether reality disagrees, not that this matters in any way, shape, or form. Race should never be a political category. So it doesn't matter whether in anthropology textbooks it turns out they're all in violation of this new religion, which they are. Just go to your local university, get an anthropology textbook, and they will literally tell you that like the shape of orbital sockets and things like that are dependent on your race. It's like, okay. Sickle cell immunities and cancer rates. And, do you think that white people get skin cancer at the same rate as black people? Obviously not. But it's not biological. Anyway.
I love the idea it's socially constructed. Like the skin cancer is handed out.
Yeah. For some reason, society just decided the white people will get skin cancer. Don't know why. Anyway. It's socially constructed and socially significant as a product of social thought, not connected to biological reality. Yeah, much non-partisanship. It gets worse though, right? Acknowledgement that racism is a normal feature of society. Racism is normal now. Just racism is normal. I don't think racism is normal. I think racism is actually quite unusual. Like, it's very unusual for me to see racists and people being racist around. But no, we've normalized racism. That's what critical race theory, normalizing racism is part of this religion, right? It's embedded within systems and institutions like the legal system that replicate racial inequality, as if that's the case, meaning that racist incidents are not aberrations, but instead manifestations of structural and systemic racism. Yes, totally non-partisan, right? But things by this definition are like, if everything in our structures and our philosophy is racist, are human rights not racist then? Like, how is that not racist? Anyway. Another part is the rejection of popular understandings about racism, including claims of meritocracy, colorblindness, and arguments that confine racism to a few bad apples, in recognition of the systemic nature of racism, which is codified in law, embedded in structures, and woven into public policy, bears primary responsibility for reproducing racial inequality. So, that's very non-partisan as well. Colorblindness, meritocracy, that's all been rejected. Yep. This is the religion being expressed. But it gets worse. The recognition of the relevance of people's everyday lives to scholarship. You might have thought that your job was to clean sewers or something, but let me tell you about the theory behind sewer cleaning. There's a little scholarship that's gone into this, say the scholars. Embracing the lived experiences of people of colour, including those preserved through storytelling, rejecting deficit-informed research that excludes epistemologies of people of colour. That means lived experience. That means lived experience. The epistemologies of people of colour means their lived experience. As in, if I feel it, it's true, and if it's not true, it's because my perception is wrong. Anyway, whereas this evolving, malleable practice critiques how the social construction of race and institutionalised racism perpetuate a racial caste system that relegates people of colour to the bottom tiers and recognises that race intersects with other identities, including sexuality and gender identity. So this religion believes that non-whites are a lower class. They expressly say it. This religion sees non-white people as being inferior to white people. Whereas critical race theory recognizes that racism is not a bygone relic of the past, but instead acknowledges that the legacy of slavery, segregation, and imposition of second-class citizenship on people of color continue to permeate the fabric of this nation, which is the United States.
Just like open brackets, by us, the critical race theorists, close brackets.
Well, they've literally declared brown people to be inferior and, quote, second-class citizens. This is literally like the untouchables in India. There's literally the view of the race crits. And of course, they note that learning and scholarship that ignores race is not demonstrating neutrality, but an adherence to the existing racial hierarchy, challenging white privilege and exposing deficit-informed research that ignores and often admits the scholarship of people of color. Right. So you're bonkers. You're bonkers and you're racist and you think that brown people are inferior. You think that white people are superior, and we can't challenge that because then your entire philosophy would disappear in a puff of smoke. Also, none of it's connected to reality anyway. It's all socially constructed. Good to know. This is the new religion. Right. And so this of course, gives you a big impetus to do things like this. The race underway to recruit thousands of black interns across the UK. Why is it a race? What's going to happen? Just, God, we have to do it right now. Move. It's crusade. Why? What happens if nothing? If you don't? Well, people will just be living their lives. The blacks will just be inferior, won't they? They'll be second-class citizens. Like, did they think that? The black people just going on the day, I'm just going to go to my job as a truck driver. By the way, Mr. Second-class citizen. Yes, I'm a progressive.
Get in the intern camp.
Yeah, exactly. You've got, like, it's just mad. It's absolutely mad. And so, of course, what they've got is this thing called, what was it called? What's the name of it? There is a name of it. I can't remember what the name of it is. But anyway, it's an application just to have 10,000 black interns. Why? Because they're black. Why? Because they're inferior. Why? Because they're the second-class citizenry. Duh. Didn't you know? I didn't.
Thanks, conservatives. Yeah. Thanks for putting this.
Yeah, I know, right? Anyway, moving on, we of course burn heretical manuscripts in this new religion. 4,700 books are removed from library shelves at 30 schools in Ontario, and the language involved in this is amazing. The flame purification ceremony, reported by Radio Canada, was held in 2019, and 30 books were burned for educational purposes. Educational purposes involve burning books. Very educational, much education. That's how you learn from books, you see. You burn them. And the ashes were used as fertilizer to plant a tree. Doesn't sound religious at all, does it? We bury the ashes of racism, discrimination, and stereotypes in the hopes that we will grow up as an inclusive country where we can all live in prosperity and security. Just sounds like the heretical manuscripts have been purged and some sort of pagan sacrifice has been occurred. So anyway, moving on, we've got patron saints of this religion. You know who that is. George Floyd is one of them. Greta Thunberg is another. I like the fact that the old god of the Israelites decided to strike the George Floyd idol with lightning in Toledo, Ohio. I find that amusing. But of course, you will find these George Floyd idols, the idols of our new gods, all over the world, such as in Afghanistan. Because the Taliban had a lot to do with the murder of George Floyd. Murder.
The Americans are the ones that did this.
Of course. They took their new religion to their colony. They went around the world and they were like, boof, George Floyd. Isn't it very much in the same way that the Spanish went over to the New World and was like, Jesus, you know? And of course they burned the books of the Aztecs and things like that. But I find this amusing because the Taliban painted over it for being, quote, a false liberal deity. I mean, they literally view this as being a religious sacrament. So anyway, what we need, though, if we're going to have a true religion of wokeness, is a holy city. We need a holy city. That sacred place, like Jerusalem, like Mecca. Billionaire entrepreneur Mark Law.
Paris, surely.
No. They're going to build that sacred city. They're going to build it. It's progressive, right? So a former Walmart executive and e-commerce billionaire wants to build the world's first woke city from scratch. I mean, I would have thought that would have been Portland, but I guess you need a brand new one. He revealed last week.
Real progressivism. Exactly,
it wasn't real progressivism, but it could be like Islam. They could have multiple holy cities. You know, first it's San Francisco, then Portland, then this. But this utopia is going to be called telosa, from the ancient Greek word telos, meaning highest purpose, as in the mission of something. So you can see how progressive and forward-thinking this is. The mission of telosa is to create a more equitable, sustainable future. That's our North Star. It's appealing to the heavens now, right? We're going to open the most fair, most inclusive city in the world. Wow. And of course, wokeness as a religion has its public rituals, such as taking the knee, of course. Next one. You can see this, everywhere, obviously. This is just how they signal to other people. It's like going to mass, bending your head in prayer, bend the knee. They have woke award ceremonies, so they have their public ceremonies. So this is essentially like going to church. We can go to the next one, which is the BAFTAs that nobody watched because it was stomach-churning woke nonsense. But I didn't watch it, so I have no idea what happened there, but I realised it was a woke ceremony for whatever reason. And of course, this happened at the Woke Olympics as well, which was described as depressing as hell. But I thought the funniest thing about this, and I didn't realise this until I watched Michael Knowles' video on this, if we can go to the next one, they're listening to their religious hymns. What do you think the religious hymn of the religion of wokeness is, Callum?
I know a lot of Soviet songs. I don't think it's going to be any of them.
No,
It's going to be just Imagine.
That's it. It's Imagine by John Lennon. Not even joking. They actually had a rendition of Imagine by John Lennon.
Let's Go or, Die International.
Nope. And finally, if you're going to be a religion, there's no point being a religion unless you're going to go on a crusade, right? You need a good holy war against the infidels. And this is the religion of human rights and anti-racism. And so what you need, if you can go to the next one, John, we can see this video. There's a white woman wearing a gorilla mask attacking a black man called Larry Elder as he campaigns. That's progressive. Wearing a gorilla mask, going up to a black man, also attacking another dude, and throwing eggs at him because he's a race traitor.
If that was a man that had done that, those guys there would have beaten the hell out of him.
Yes. But that's the crusade they're on. There's a black guy. We need to get our gorilla masks because we're woke and progressive. We're the anti-racists. Get your gorilla mask. We have to stop this black guy. How dare this black guy be engaging in politics? If you're not wearing your gorilla mask, can you even call yourself a leftist when you talk to a black person? So that's the religion of wokeness. Enjoy.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to prelotuseaters.com and get access to all our premium content.
Things like our book club, where we examine classics like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World and examine the themes that underpin it, and now we're getting worryingly close to that, or modern books like Mark Sidwell's The Long March, which is how exactly we ended up in the current cultural situation we're in and what conservatives can do about it. Or you can check out the other series we have, such as our Contemplation series, where Hugo and Josh decided to, in the latest one, have a look at an examination on the ways that other elections have been rigged for no reason at all. Or you can check out our Epoch series, which is one of my personal favorites because this is where I get to talk about history. And I love talking about just random things from history. And one of the great things we can do with this series is talk about those things that aren't so often discussed. So, you can talk about Xerxes' army, the vast army that invaded Greece during the Greco-Persian Wars. Or we can go through things like Herodotus' view on the Scythians. Who are they? You probably don't know, but they used to be quite an important people a long time ago, and they're very, very interesting. We've got some really good reports about them. Or we've got premium podcasts, which is things we generally don't want to put outside of the paywall because we might get in trouble for them, such as the list of things that Alex Jones was right about. Or we do just very interesting discussions because there are things that we do lots of work on. Another one is that I'm particularly proud of is where Christopher Hitchens, the famous new atheist, would have fallen during the modern culture wars, because he probably wouldn't have been very woke. But we also have lots of interviews and articles and other things on the website that you can sign up to enjoy, and we're really proud of them.
So if any of that sounds good to you, go over to lotuseaters.com and sign up for as little as £5 a month to support us, keep the show going, and also to get access to all the content. Thank you and goodbye.